All right, well, good afternoon and welcome to today's Dakota County Commissioner Candidate Forum, sponsored by the Lakeville Area Chamber of Commerce. I'm Glenn Starfield, the owner of Express Employment Professionals and a member of the Lakeville Area Chamber of Commerce Business Advocacy Committee, and I'll be your moderator today. The timekeeper for today's forum will be Tim Roach, our president of the Chamber, and we have two candidates that are running for the Dakota County Commissioner seat that covers Lakeville, Chuck Hallberg and Mary Liz Holberg. Unfortunately, Mr. Hallberg cannot be with us today, but we'll proceed with the forum as originally planned. The format for today's forum will be as follows. Mary Liz will be provided proposed questions, and she was provided proposed questions in advance, and understanding that we would also take spontaneous questions from the audience. At the registration table in the back, there's paper for you to write down your proposed questions. Questions cannot be directed towards individual candidates, although we only have one here, so should have proofread that. Sorry. If you could give those questions to Mr. Roach, and he will give those to me, and I'll offer those to Mary Liz. Mary Liz will receive 2 minutes for opening remarks and 2 minutes to respond to each of the questions. Finally, you'll be given 1 minute for wrap-up and closing remarks. With 30 seconds remaining, Mr. Roach will hold up a sign, and then when time is up, he'll hold the stop sign. Do you have any questions?
I do.
Okay.
I do not.
All right, let's get started then. I'll give you 2 minutes for opening remarks.
All right, thank you, Glenn. Well, it's my pleasure to be here today in front of the Chamber. I've been a member of this Chamber since 1995 and active on the Government Affairs Committee, which has probably had about 10 different names over that period of time, but have certainly always enjoyed the interaction with the business leaders and other elected officials in the community. My family moved here in 1968. I was 10 years old, and I still remember distinctly the joy of going out to the playground on the first day and seeing grass. I thought Lakeville was the best place in the world, and I still do. When my husband and I decided to purchase a home, it was the easy question for me to drag that old Edina boy back out to Lakeville and purchase our home in 1986. We have 2 children, and I have 1 grandchild, Tyson, who's 4.5. My family had a strong tradition of being involved in the community, and for 35 years, my parents took foster children in our home, many of them special needs, and the #1 rule in our home is that you weren't able to complain about anything unless you are willing to work towards a solution, propose a solution, and get to work to make it better. Well, I think I really took that standard to heart, and while I love this community, there are things that could be tweaked over the years, and I did what my parents told me and rolled up my sleeves and decided to get to work. As a result, I spent time on the Planning Commission, 3 years as a city council member, and 16 years as a state representative for this community. I also was on the Friends of the Lakeville Library before there was a library, a founding member of the Arts Board, and also in 1992, my brother Jay Blanchard and I headed up the project that resulted in the Land of Amazement playground that still stands today.
All right. So if elected, Mary Liz, what would be your top 3 priorities?
Thank you. Well, it's the top 3 priorities would be transportation, effective use of tax dollars, and then setting a climate that is good for job creation and respects the family budget. In the area of transportation, I'm a big roads person, but I can also point to something that I spearheaded that is the most effective transit solution in my mind in the whole metro area. For years, Lakeville was not in the transit taxing district, and they tried to get our tax money without giving us any service. We held off, and eventually, when the time was right and we were able to get the 35W busway done, we enacted that, and that's a perfect transit solution. We built additional capacity into the corridor for off-peak by adding a lane of traffic, and then put the busway for commuters and buses during rush. And that busway, that route has the highest fare box recovery. Over 70% of the operating costs of that busway are paid for by the users, unlike the rest of the system that on average only about 32% is recovered. Job creation, we need to be really mindful of the fact that the average household income is now $6,000 less per household than it was in 1999. So while some would say that we have recovered economically, that quite frankly, our families are still struggling, and we need good, high-paying jobs in the local area to further enhance that recovery. And that can be enhanced by a tax climate in which Dakota County keeps the lid on spending and makes sure that the property tax portion that is attributed to the county is as low as possible.
And how do you feel Dakota County can play an active or engaged role in economic development in the region?
Glenn, I was giving questions. Is this the TIF question? I'm sorry. Maybe we were given different questions.
No, that's the next question.
Okay. I believe that Dakota County can play a really important role, going back to the priorities in job creation, is making sure that they are competitive. Dakota County has the unique ability to approve plats that abut county roads. It's the only county of 87 in the state of Minnesota that has that ability. And so it's imperative that Dakota County be a good partner with the city of Lakeville to allow for those economic development opportunities to move forward while still respecting public safety and mobility needs of our corridors.
Okay, sorry to catch you off guard there. All right, the next question is actually a multi-part question. So two issues that in development that occurs themes in Dakota County. One is access to county roads, and two is the county's view on incentives like tax incremental financing and its opposition to that tool. How can the county work more effectively with the cities to overcome these obstacles?
Well, I have been attending the county board meetings recently, and in fact yesterday under their consent agenda they put forward a denial of or withheld their support for a tax increment finance district project in Air Lake. And in reading the criteria that the county considered, it appears that they're very happy to allow for this type of financing tool for affordable housing projects, but pretty reticent to do it for economic development. I don't think that that's a balanced approach. You don't get out of subsidized housing without a good household income type job. And quite frankly, when you look at the incentives that have been provided in communities like Shakopee and neighboring counties, if Dakota County fails to be competitive in their ability to set standards for economic development, it's going to be detrimental to the Lakeville area. Now, certainly I would be judicious in the use of that tool, but it's really important that we don't tie the hands of our local communities and make it so they cannot compete with neighboring counties for those really important high-paying jobs. And I touched on the plat issue a little bit. Again, in 1992, I served on the County Road 42 Corridor Task Force Study Group, and as you all know, County Road 42 has tons of driveways, stop signs, and you can barely get through there. We have to limit access to roads for mobility purposes and safety purposes. But again, we need to use forethought. And in fact, when I was on the city council, we did a 50-year transportation plan to plan how different areas of Lakeville would grow and allowed for planning for access. So we need limited access, but also allow for reasonable development.
Okay, great. And now 2 minutes for closing remarks.
It's going very fast, isn't it? Well, again, I'm grateful to be here today, and I've talked a little bit about Lakeville and how much I loved it from the first day that I walked out on the playground and it wasn't all asphalt and there was actually grass there, but it goes far deeper than that. It has been an honor and a privilege to represent this area at the state legislature, and we know we're a community where everybody rolls up their sleeves to get things done, whether it's a Veterans Memorial or volunteering for youth athletics and facilities, more recently the King Athletic Complex. And that's not the case in every community, and we should be very, very proud of that. And I was always so happy to brag about all of us when talking about Lakeville. And certainly that experience both on the city council and at the state legislature gives me a solid background in how these different government units need to work together so that we are complementary of our goals and roles so that we can get things done in an expedited fashion and not be duplicate efforts. And then that way we'll get greater efficiencies. I believe that this is a great community, and I would be truly honored to have the ability to continue to represent the community at the county level. When I announced my retirement for the state legislature, the Democrat Speaker of the House made the comment that I was always more concerned with policy than politics, and I would be dishonest if I would say that I was going to miss the partisan nature of the legislature. I would really like the opportunity to go to a local level and work in a nonpartisan fashion at the county level, representing the needs of the city of Lakeville at the county level. Thank you.
Well, we did get a write-in from the audience. We're doing this backwards, but it just got to me. So Dakota County's use of eminent domain for parks and other things has caused some issues. What are your thoughts on the Dakota County park system and the use of eminent domain?
Well, I like to say I was against the use of eminent domain before it was cool. Some of you may be aware of the Kelo decision, which was a U.S. Supreme Court decision that said that local units of government could use economic development as a reason for use of eminent domain, and that then precipitated or caused states to go ahead and enact tighter laws regarding that. But before any of that happened, we had a situation in Minnesota. Some of you may remember a number of car dealerships that were located in Richfield in the northwest corner of 35 and 494. And the city of Burnsville went in and used eminent domain to take those businesses to allow for the development of the Best Buy headquarters. And I was in the legislature at the time and supporting legislation that would not have allowed that to happen. And unfortunately, at that time, I was only one of a handful that actually supported that type of control of the use of eminent domain for economic development purposes. So my thoughts about it is that eminent domain should only be used in the most limited of circumstances for a very high public need, whether it mean a road connection, possibly a trail connection, and every effort should be made to work with the individual property owner to work for a win-win solution. But taking personal property for economic development purposes, I think, is wrong. In those rare instances where land is needed for public infrastructure, it should be very judicious in the amount of land that is taken, and again, every effort should be made to come to a win-win with the property owner and only take that which is most needed to accomplish the goal.
All right, well, I'd like to thank Mary Liz Holberg for attending today's Dakota County Commissioner Candidate Forum. I'd also like to thank the production staff for the city of Lakeville for videotaping today's event. And it'll be available on the city's public access channel and also on our chamber's website. The Lakeville Area Chamber of Commerce has not and will not endorse any candidates in any election year. Thank you so much for coming, and remember to vote on Tuesday, November 4th.